What's up, people? I'm Elhiem and today we have Thorne Stallings on with us from Motograph. What drives you about it? What drove you to start Motograph?
Yeah. Thorne Stallings, owner of Motograph. It's a company that is focused around classic car access. I probably got started with this within the last year. Started putting pen to paper, developing the website, probably within the last 6 months or so, and we just got up and running within the last couple weeks or so. Really, the inspiration behind it, and we're still very early on, but the inspiration behind it was really about how do you make this scarce resource, as I see a classic car motorcycle, available on a more broader perspective. When I was kind of coming up with the idea for this company, I noticed, here we are in downtown Oklahoma City, and like a lot of other areas around the country, it's revitalized quite a bit. There's a lot of old places, old areas that are being made into new. And what I reflected on is just over these past few years, spending a lot of time down here. One thing we all notice is there's always someone out and about, like having a picture taking of himself or doing any number of their own content, right? Which of course has barriers broken down with the advent of these phones that we carry around in our pockets and apps that we use. And at the same time, I also noticed quite a large vintage movement going on, vintage style, fashion, all that stuff. Not just thrifting in a garage sale. And I really enjoy that stuff. My parents grew up in the 70s, and so I got to hear a lot about their story growing up. And but one thing I noticed between these two different audiences is that I never saw any classic cars around, and that's something that I grew up around, were classic cars. And so the light bulb, if you will, was, my family enjoys them, appreciates them. We have some, but they just sit around all the time. Why are they not being more actively valued? And that's kind of how the idea was born. And like I said, incredibly early on right now, I just started hitting the pavement the last couple of weeks, getting in touch with businesses. I'll be on the phone quite a bit this week, but really my aim is, we all use stuff online, specifically Instagram, to use that as an example. Various different, audio, visual things going on there all the time. You can custom tailor it to whatever your preferences are, right? And so myself, like anyone else, I end up seeing a lot of stuff about motors, about old cars, and just general fashion stuff. I'm not a vintage clothing wearer per se, but I do appreciate it. And so I see that a lot, and when I see all these local businesses out there, there's no advertising middleman between them and their audience. They get to control their own channels of communication with their audience. And it's very heavily done with Instagram, to use them as an example. And so kind of my idea behind this is, whether you're a small business, whether you've got a boutique, women's store, or a clothing outfit, or a footwear place, or a bar or restaurant, you're not really selling just your business through your social media presence. You're selling a lifestyle. And I think old cars and motorcycles really sell a different type of lifestyle that I think a lot of people aspire to have, even though they don't. Kind of like you mentioned earlier, people like the vibe of a lot of stuff, right? And really just kind of thinking about the broader umbrella that this idea could potentially have. I grew up in a small town, and one thing that we always saw in small towns were these old cars in parades. As long as you knew the right person, right? Same thing, weddings. A lot of people like to have wedding getaway cars. It's a very fragmented business. There's a lot of different things going down that pipeline, but that's yet another business. People like to drive away or ride away from a wedding in a nice getaway car. And then there's kind of the similar market that you've mentioned is just the creative business. It's not just businesses or people for their own experiences. Sometimes the business is the person, the business is the individual, they're the creator. And I don't claim to understand a lot of that. I can't say I've ever used TikTok, but I'm a millennial, so I'm too old for that. I think I'd be Gen Z to do TikTok.
The new generation.
There's a cap.
Period.
But
Yeah,
between,
Gen Z's not really making it like that.
yeah, so between those things, and I'm a curator and I appreciate music too. And I think one thing that music always is doing, whether it's an album cover or a music video, those are some of my favorite of those videos and old albums. Have something like a classic car or motorcycle and just kind of being able to visualize the different style and the lifestyles that people used to live in the 60s, 70s, or at least they outwardly proclaimed to. Of course, there was a lot of real life things going on in the background, but I've always been nostalgic about that period in time. And I think a lot of people these days appear to feel the same way. They just don't have access to the right vehicles to which they can express themselves with. So
Right.
that's the idea, is essentially democratizing classic cars, which are inherently difficult for most people to obtain. They cost money, they take up space, you gotta maintain them. But people still appreciate the visual, the style, and the lifestyle aspect that they can potentially bring to them. And so that's kind of the goal of Motograph.
You can make some heartfelt moments happen with what you have going on. I see a lot of different business implications. As you just said, with you being a music lover, I don't know if you know of Florida Georgia Line.
I do, yeah.
That would be one of the implementations that I would say I could see Motograph fitting in. The fact of having an older car in a newer film, that would bring up the value of our film just by showing it. It's like an NFT almost, because you may not get the chance to have this car in any other way. You know what I'm saying? You might not be able to buy it soon. With the way old cars are being bought up as of right now, I don't see you being able to get it back anytime soon. No.
Yeah, no, they're like a lot of assets. I mean, they're inflating massively right now, but a lot of people don't want to have them, and frankly, because like I said, they cost time, they cost money, and you got to work on them all the time, and that's fine. And that's what Motograph's all about. I don't claim to be as good a mechanic as my dad and his generation, but I still have a big appreciation for them. And kind of to what you said on the music video perspective or your own film's perspective is that we have this on the website, but we say that Motograph was founded upon the principle of connection. A lot of people, when I've discussed this idea with different friends, relatives, individuals, they don't quite understand the business, which makes sense because there's really not a business that I know of that is 100% like this. So it's a very different, very new type of business. But every time they see an old car, whether it's one that I've driven up in, a 78 Mercury, which is kind of my flagship car if I'm doing this stuff, they are all about it. They've got a visceral connection with those, and that's how it always was growing up with old cars. Is people may not really know much about them, but there's a connection to them because as we look out over the street, we see all these newer cars parked, and they're great machines, but they're really more pieces of technology. They do incredible things, whereas I think old cars can be pieces of art more so. I think they're really, depending on the piece, it really is valued like a piece of art. They're appreciating assets, and that's a different conversation. But I guess at the end of the day, being used as creative outlets, the creators, the people who make their own content, whatever the nature of it may be, we want them to be able to use our vehicles as an outlet for them. They paint them how they want, whether it's Florida Georgia Line doing something for whatever video, whether it's one of the films. You kind of have the canvas and you kind of get to do with it what you please. And so we really like that idea. We don't claim to be extraordinary creative minds ourselves. I don't, at least, but I think the people that do have a knack for what they do, and I think we can help them. The Mercury that I mentioned is my own. All the others, my parents' belongings. One of that's actually, or the Corvette, one of the cars was actually my grandfather's. These already exist, but what we're trying to do is more actively promote these products. Rather than just putting your car on a platform and hoping someone comes to you. What we're hoping to do is more actively solicit business and really try to paint these things in a new light, besides just a normal rental car or a normal chauffeured rental. There's lots of different ways that we do.
Would y'all be opposed to taking the cars to other places like shipping? Would that be?
Well, those exist for greater car shows. At this point, it really is kind of an open canvas.
Car shows are another thing that we're going to be attending as music people.
Yeah.
So that's why I say that, because we may not want to drive that car there, but if we can have our car there for a photo shoot at said hot rod event, you know what I'm saying? And
yeah, and this is even
cool
car shows are even a perfect example of how a lot of things become democratized, because people will just do these cars and coffee, this kind of a thing. I think they do it in a lot of different cities. I know they do it here in Oklahoma City. I haven't gone myself, but
that's new for me. I'm gonna have to write that one down.
Yeah, I think it's the first Saturday of each month, Chisholm Creek area. But
I've caught them hot riding.
Yeah, oh yeah. So there's a diverse array there, but all that is just a modern take on the traditional, small town of cars, together for a car show or something. It doesn't have to be a major thing at a major arena officially sanctioned. But no, with regards to kind of those types of business ideas, it's really just a matter of, at this point, who is our customer and what are their needs. And so if there's somebody that might have an idea like that, we're certainly open to listening. Welcome to visit our website, anyone that listens, motograph.com.
Definitely.
I can always tell you about any of our cars. We've got my grandpa's 1961 Corvette. We've got a 72 Ford Torino. My dad's first car was a 72 Ford Torino, Great Torino. A 72 Ford Thunderbird. My mom's first car was a 72 Ford Thunderbird. We've got my 1978 Mercury Grand Marquis hardtop. An old truck, Ford F100, and then various different motorcycles. Most of our vehicles are from the 70s, because that's where my parents grew up. And so you'll see this reflected in the collection, but as well as with the dirt bikes and motorcycles. They're really cool visual tools.
We didn't even get to that. You know what, man? Rewind that back. What's the story on the BMW motorcycle? That's a new one for me.
Well, the BMW, that one specifically I can't say. It's a 77 BMW R107.
You can only imagine what it's seen.
Oh, it's on the subject of the collection, the owner here. My dad actually raced amateur motocross.
Oh,
so
snap.
On the collection, there's some brands people have not heard of. Mako, Oltaco, Oso. They're like Spanish, German. They're just old motocross stuff. But yeah, there is other more recognizable brands. Like we've got some Hondas. BMW is kind of the German version of Honda when it comes to the car motorcycle crossover. But yeah, that's that Thunder Blue BMW right there. Now it's lightly modified. You used to have a much larger seat. You put two on the back if you wanted, but it's really just lightly modified into what's called a canyon carver, so a bit more agile. But just an old German speedster bike. It rides very different than the other ones, but for the purpose of Motograph, it's got a very unique, look to it. What's that?
I didn't mean to cut you off, but do you know what gave it the name Canyon Carver?
Canyon Carver?
Yeah.
I'd have to ask. This is part of the process of kind of getting the research. I think Canyon Carver is either an official term for an actual type of bike or something that my dad made up on the spot. And so
it sounds Evil Knievel to me.
Evil Knievel is on some pretty big old bikes. No, we don't have anything like his, unfortunately. Big old Harley, but they've all got their own personalities. And the Beamer is it's a very unique looking bike, even amongst this amongst this collection.
Yeah, because looking at it as an older bike, I would actually look at it more. It has a more futuristic style to it to me, actually.
Yeah, it's from the 70s. You'll see old BMW bikes riding around every now and then. I've seen one in the Plaza District before, but that one's a pretty. One thing I've told businesses is that we do have a new type of business. We do have old machines, but we think that they are unique services, and we also think they're unique machines. I think there's a lot of classic cars and motorcycles that you see in a lot of different places, and they're very cool. But we think that a lot of our offerings are a little more distinct than you might find in other, services. Certainly, the most visible may be a wedding getaway cars. You might see, some pretty nice looking cars in those, but we like to think that a lot of our offerings maybe have a little bit more grit than the other ones, a little different, a little more 70s era flair, if you will. So, but yeah.
Did they have car magazines in the 70s?
Oh yeah. Car and Driver.
No, don't recall. I didn't.
Here's one for you. See if you can Google it when you can. I forget the name of the article exactly, but there was a writer for Car and Driver called Brock Yates. But what he did was in the late 70s, he and a guy who worked at Car and Driver, they got a brand new Corvette. They lifted it, they put off-road tires on it, they put like a rack on it, and they drove it all the way from Michigan to Alaska before any of the roads were paved. I can't remember the name of the article for the life of me, but it's incredibly interesting to me. But yeah, the Car and Driver, a lot of different outlets existed back then, and they've got some pretty cool images of those cars probably amongst some guy with sideburns smoking a cigarette, but that's kind of part of the whole feel. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, that feel right there. Because I was just thinking about our models. They definitely need extra things to do, and being a car model is definitely one more thing to add to the resume.
There's a lot of things we can do with them. We want our customers to be the ones who kind of write that story. We just provide the outlet. That's our goal.